Well, it has been a while since we did a live stream, but I thought tonight's classic between Golden State and Denver demanded it. It's been a pretty wild the first 3 days of the NBA season. We're going to talk about everything, the gambling allegations, talk about what we saw from the Indiana Pacers in their Eastern Conference title defense. Going to send a quick social media message to everyone to let them know that, let's see, do I even remember how to do that? You know what? No, it's going to take too long. We're just going to go. I don't care if anyone watches. It'll be on YouTube after this. I'll tweet it out later. Let's make some faces. Just, I would say, the feeling of just being in Chase Center down the stretch today, watching that game. And what it would be like to be Terry Rozier's attorney right now. All right, let's do a podcast. Welcome on to a Thursday night edition, Friday morning almost edition of Dunked On Prime. For those of y'all listening on the free feed, I want to remind you all that our preseason 25 code will get you 35% off a year of Dunked On Prime. Best time to do it. It's looks like it's gonna be a pretty good season, so it'd be a nice investment to go ahead and sign up for a year now. Get that discount. Will be available with that code preseason 25. Link to that is in the show notes. We got to talk about the gambling investigation. We will get to that, but first off, I just want to talk about what took place in Chase Center today. A matchup between two teams that to me both looked like NBA title contenders.
And it definitely had some ebbs and flows, but ended up being a game where both teams posted offensive ratings in the mid 120s. It was a 137-131 overtime win for the Golden State Warriors. And I brought up the ebbs and flows because I thought it was important of how that went. So the Warriors started the game on a 10-0 run, and they looked great.
No timeout from David Adelman, by the way, which I thought was interesting and actually was the right decision.
Yeah, I believe it was. And then the Nuggets eventually worked their way back. I believe it was like a 19-4 run to push them firmly into the lead. And I thought you have to count the 10-0 start, but the Nuggets pretty thoroughly, I thought, outplayed the Warriors in the first 2.5 quarters. Then eventually Golden State made their way back. And what was most fascinating to me about the beginning of the game, there were kind of two different things that connected. And the Warriors, this was their second game, was Denver's first. But we've talked and thought a lot about the Warriors, like their fastball, their best combinations. And as Steve Kerr is using Al Horford now, he's generally playing about 20 minutes a game, played more in this one in part because it went to overtime. And there were circumstances. So basically, until the end of the game, Al Horford and Draymond Green very rarely played together. They were functionally the center rotation. Yeah. And so what that meant was the Warriors didn't have all of their best defensive players on the floor together, and no team stresses that like the Denver Nuggets because of Jokic and everything else. And so for that long stretch where the Nuggets basically outplayed the Warriors for about the first 2.5 quarters, really, to me, the story there was that until they got extreme, the Warriors couldn't really get stops against the Nuggets. It seemed like the misses were more just shots didn't go in rather than them not generating good ones.
Yeah, and while Aaron Gordon would become the story late in the first half, Jamal Murray was the one who got them back into things early. 10 assists for him, 25 points, and 10 of 16 from 2, and just looked very athletic, getting separation. The Warriors did not, when Jonathan Kuminga wasn't guarding it, pretty much everyone else couldn't really do anything with Jamal Murray. And it was interesting because Nikola Jokic was not that involved. He was playing mostly off the catch early, took a ton of threes as well. He was only 2 out of 13 from 3. Rare you'll see him take more threes than 2s, but Murray just had it working really well and was setting guys up. and looked very athletic. I thought he had a nice preseason, and the word is that he's in the best shape that he's been in, certainly better than last year, it would seem. And he had a lot of really athletic plays. He had a finish right through the chest of Draymond Green late as well. That's been one of the things, his getting to the basket and finishing that hasn't looked as good. And then the other thing that hasn't looked as good is his ability to get separation in the mid-range. Now, I did think Murray wore down in the second half, and then Aaron Gordon just went absolutely crazy. Ended up making his first 8 threes, but he had 3 flurries of 3 of them, end of the first quarter, then end of the second quarter, that put Denver on a 70-point first half.
Gordon ended up 10 of 11 from 3. And I don't think it was, the hometown boost. He's from San Jose, went to Archbishop Mitty, but he did play with a lot of energy. And I mean, some of them in the beginning were just the Warriors leaving Gordon open and him making shots. But later on, I mean, there was one where he basically pulled up in transition. Now, he kind of waltzed into it in transition, but just took the shot. That's not something that we've seen from Gordon. And he deserves so much praise for the work he has put in on a shot. He's not going to go 10 for 11 every game, but he was making the most of the opportunities and he shoots it with confidence, and it looked very good. And then he was able to at times parlay that into getting some success inside the arc. Also just does that by his pace in the offense. And so Aaron Gordon, previous career high of 41 points, has that in the middle of the fourth quarter on his way to a 50 burger. He becomes they expanded. I think he became now the 5th player to score 40 plus in the first game of his team season this year.
And Gordon last season experienced one of the great shooting improvements in NBA history. Now, it was on a small sample, but in the playoffs, you feared his 3-point shot until he got hurt. And especially considering he was dealing with the calf, it was an impressive improvement. And I was very concerned about how he was going to age because he's so reliant on power and athleticism, which he still has. He's not quite the level of dunker that he was even 2 years ago, but like, he's making these shots now. He still is not, a movement shooter necessarily, but he's shooting them when he's open. And David Edelman talked about it after the game, saying that Aaron Gordon, because he's such a good driver, teams were going to close out short to him. And if he just didn't speed himself up as much, he'd become a better shooter. I mean, remember when he came out in 2014, he shot like 44% from the foul line in his 1 year at Arizona in the 2014 draft. So he's made himself into like an 85% free throw shooter now too. And he still has enough of that power around the rim. Now, I don't think he's the same force defensively. He struggled to stay in front of Steph Curry, as did everyone on the Denver Nuggets. He was the key to shutting down Damian Lillard. And that first year they had him in 21, he's not that level of guy moving his feet anymore. But as an offensive player, he's really going to extend his career now with the shooting, which is extremely impressive. So yeah, it seems like that improvement is going to stick for him. So if those two guys look really good, then I think that's the Nuggets are going to be championship contenders. And for Golden State, you talked about some of the lineup stuff, and this is some really interesting too, because not only is playing Horford and Draymond difficult, right? That's why Horford's not starting right now, because they feel like they need to have one of those two guys on the floor defensively at all times. And Hal Horford, they want to play him 24 minutes a game. He's not going to play back-to-backs. And so in the first half, they didn't play together at all. They didn't play together at all until the last 6 minutes of the game, crunch time, which is probably going to be the MO during the regular season. So the question became, who are they going to close with? Because Kuminga has been playing well these first 2 games, which is pretty exciting. Maybe we could talk more about that before we talk about that, the closing lineup for Golden State, of just what we've seen from Kuminga these first 2.
I didn't think he was as impressive in the Nuggets win as he was in the Lakers win, but Kuminga getting downhill, being more assertive, but also being more aggressive as a rebounder. He has improved some of the areas that we have talked about a lot, and more geographically close to the Warriors. We see a lot of them in person. And so I think maybe this is closer to what real Kuminga is going to be, and that's plenty helpful for the Warriors.
No, it is. And like he had to play against Luka Doncic because they had no one else to guard him. And then they realized that they don't really have anyone else to guard Jamal Murray. And since he's their best option at that now, and I don't think he's absolutely elite at that, but he's not someone that you're just going to go score on one-on-one, right? Like he's not, and he's not a great help defender. So this is kind of actually a good role for him, that old Klay Thompson role of just guard the ball. And now he was involved more in the team defense down the stretch with Draymond, using the JaVale McGee Memorial joystick to kind of move him around a little bit, but he did well enough. And I really, the thing that stuck out to me is that he was opportunistic, and he is coming in and playing well and playing team basketball. He's slowing down on his drives. He's making nice reads, not getting himself in trouble, turning it over or taking bad shots. And then you aren't seeing instances where he's not competing or making mental mistakes defensively. And just to have that one body, because like Jimmy, Draymond, and Al Horford, generally, Draymond will do it a little bit at the end of the game, are not going to guard the best ball handler on the opposing team. Obviously, Steph Curry's not going to do it either. And then the question became, well, what are they going to do at the end? Are they going to go back to Podziemski and Kuminga's going to sit anyway after having himself a nice game? No, they actually, Terry Stott suggested, you and I talked about it too, is apparently this was like something totally out of nowhere. They've never practiced with this alignment at all. But in this game, with Steph Curry going as well as he was, and the scab of Nikola Jokic's defense to pick at, and really basically anybody other than Christian Braun for Steph Curry to pick at, they were able to get by with that lack of spacing. If you're going up against the Thunder, maybe it's going to be a different circumstance. But I thought this was the right call. There was a theory to this lineup, and it did work down the end as their defense really stiffened, and they still had no problem scoring.
They didn't necessarily need the spacing in this one, and also because Denver doesn't have the same kind of rim protection. Also, that's another. Jokic is a sore in a couple different ways for the Warriors to pick at, and that was useful for them. And it's also useful to potentially note that I think the intention might be that eventually DeAnthony Melton can take some of this, but he's not going to be ready for a while, my guess. So you can't plan on that for this point, and it is an awkward Warriors lineup at some points. And I mean, it's wild for them to be as Curry dependent as they were at the end. I mean, there are other guys who can make decisions and who can initiate certain things, but it really was the Steph show. And in some ways it was paralleling Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's first game, where he was really out of it in the beginning. So Curry hits the first shot of the game, makes a 3-pointer that starts that 10-0 run. And then he doesn't score again until the end of the first half. He scores a couple times at the end. So he's 3 of 8 from the field, 1 of 5 from 3, no free throw attempts in the entire first half. And then that 3 of 8 in the second half, he is 11 of 18, or 11 of, I can do math. 11 of 15 in that second half, or 17. And so like he had to do all of it. He did all of it in the second half and the overtime. And we don't know how many more of these superlative Stephen Curry performances we're going to see, especially you and I lucky enough to do it in person, but it was awesome.
No, it was unbelievable. And this is a team that he largely has played well against, because they have the two things that he is going to thrive against. One is a big slow center that he can go at. And then the other thing is not really much rim protection. And so those two things, either he's going to get an open 3, or he's going to be able to get it in the lane and finish or make plays. And he scores 16 straight points down the end, 8 in less than a minute to close a 7-point deficit for the Warriors under 3 minutes to go, which is a pretty high win expectancy for the Denver Nuggets, and a great clutch team in Nikola Jokic. And we'll talk, of course, much more about the end of the game and how it went down, because it was just an absolute treat to see this level of basketball and intellectual basketball being played by probably the two smartest teams in basketball at this point in time, with the demise of some of the others in recent vintage. So yeah, he was awesome. He's looked good in the first game. He looked great in preseason. And yeah, it could end for him at any time at his age. But as of right now, he's still one of the top 10 best players in the world. Jimmy Butler did not do as much in this game. He was 4 of 11 from 2. Aaron Gordon is not a good matchup for him because Gordon has the size to deal with him, and he doesn't have to jump and feel like he has to get out of position contesting him and then give up fouls. So this is not a great Butler matchup, but they didn't need him because Steph was looking so good. And I mean, the Nuggets were just trying to hide Jokic everywhere late, as we'll talk about it. It just didn't work. This is the debut of Cam Johnson. What did you make of him on the way to a mere 5-point night?
He was very quiet on the offensive end. Only 8 attempts for him in an overtime game. He had 8 attempts, and Christian Braun had 7. Brown only took 1 3, missed it. And I think that should come in time. Like, the ball will find him a little bit more. But in this case, they'll come up. I might bring it up in the later part. I actually had, and I've been very skeptical and critical of Cam Johnson's defense overall. He had a couple of nice plays being the low man. And this isn't going to probably be as extreme as like D'Angelo Russell defending reasonably well that year for the Timberwolves when he never has in the rest of his career. But there are players, especially if they're physically like reasonably sized as Cam Johnson is, who maybe there's a possibility that if you ask him to do less and give him some more specific responsibilities, that his flaws are less present. But remember that they also were playing the Golden State Warriors, who for a lot of this game were very single player, leaning on a single player who Cam Johnson doesn't really have to guard.
Yeah, I thought Cam was being guarded by Steph Curry the whole time. And the Nuggets, again, it was a weird game for Denver. I mean, they were effective. They were dominant in the first half offensively. They put up a 124 offensive rating against a very good defense. But they just didn't do it in the way that I think they're going to do it regularly, right? Like Gordon was just going so well that they just focused a lot of stuff around him, and it generally was pretty effective. And then Murray was the number 2, and Jokic, like I said, was mostly just kind of hanging out at the top of the arc taking threes, but he shot over 40% on those last year. I would expect him to shoot better. I would expect him to be more involved. He did have a triple-double at the end. But Golden State also generally has better guys to guard Jokic than most teams do. Not that he can't beat anyone on Golden State reasonably well. So Cam was being guarded by Steph Curry. Certainly, I think if there were a playoff series between these two teams, that Cam Johnson running some pick and roll with Steph Curry on him with Nikola Jokic would be something that they would want to do a lot of, or just stuff happening on the second side. The other thing, though, to me, was that Christian Braun was ineffective guarding Curry. Like, Curry did not particularly feel him. He's not bad, but he's not one of the guys who has the length to really bother Steph's jumper at all. And the Warriors screeners are so good, like he's not going to be able to just stick to Curry like glue. That was another thing that stuck out to me, is Al Horford is also an awesome screener. And so, and he's also a good passer and screener off the ball. He's another master of the dark arts when it comes to illegal screening. That's now on the Warriors as well. So he gives Steph another guy who he can come off a screen against that they didn't really have as much last year, with Kevon Looney not really playing that much. So, but Christian Braun just was irrelevant in the half court in this game. He tried to get a couple of cuts. He took 1 3-point attempt. He wasn't being guarded all game, and he took 1 3-point attempt. And it's just on a very good passing team. And like, he's being asked almost really to more hang out in the baseline and the dunker spot and look for cuts. And part of that is because they play with a flat floor at the end of the game with just Jokic and Murray up top and everyone else on the baseline, and he kind of doesn't really have anywhere to stand. But this is the type of game, he'll have very good games, right? But like, when he's not really able to get going in transition, the Warriors shut down the Nuggets transition attack pretty well. He's not really able to find a place to be against a good defense in the half court.
I agree on all fronts with that. A couple of other kind of low end rotation things that were of interest to me. One is because of the Draymond Horford dynamic discussed before, that means there basically are not any minutes game to game for Quentin Post and Trace Jackson Davis. That will change. Horford's only going to play one end of back-to-backs and all these other things, but the Warriors' other centers just aren't a factor at all right now. But one player who has been, in part because of the absence of Moses Moody, is Will Richard. And Will Richard, I wasn't particularly impressed with him, wasn't super familiar. I mean, played on that Florida team that won the championship last year. Wasn't super impressed with him in Summer League, but he brought some real enthusiasm and like he played hard, he played with energy, and I thought that brought a needed dynamic to the Warriors kind of end of the bench rotation.
Yeah, played 17 minutes, and he, at least in theory, can make some shots. He sticks his nose in there, had 5 rebounds in 17 minutes, which they need against pretty much every team, but particularly this one. And the part I was most impressed by, and I was talking to a Warriors coach after the game, he said, yeah, we've been working on that all year with our guards after Houston put Şengün on Moses Moody in that playoff series, is they got to get better at screening. So Will Richard had a couple of screens for Steph, and they got a foul on one of them for Steph, and then the other one, he slipped to the basket, and I think he set up Kuminga for either a foul or a score. So yeah, he looks like another find, especially given how bereft this year's draft was in the second round, to get someone who could play in a game like this right away. Another steal in the 50s, third straight year now with Jackson Davis post, and now Will Richard. To get anybody with a heartbeat in the 50s is pretty good. Last big theme I wanted to hit on was the Denver Nuggets bench. What did you think of the remade group with Jonas Valanciunas, Bruce Brown back, Peyton Watson supposedly better, Spencer Jones even getting a little tick, Tim Hardaway? Those were the 5 who played off the bench.
None of them really wowed me in their individual minutes, but it's important to note, and this was not as true last year, the Nuggets outscored the Warriors when Nikola Jokic was off the floor. They were, we'll use Valanciunas as proxy, they were +4 in those 12 minutes. And not that it was, there was some other stuff in there, but no, I think that's about it. But I think that
and more than that, part of that was AG going crazy again at the beginning of the fourth. That was another really nice Adelman move, was bringing AG back earlier than he normally would at the start of the fourth. That really helped them win those minutes. But yeah, with Nikola Jokic off the floor in 12 minutes, they scored 36 points.
That's great. And so, Tim Hardaway missed a couple of shots. He also made a couple of shots. And I thought that Bruce Brown was active defensively. He didn't really do too much for me in the half court offensively, but they didn't wow me, but they executed well enough. And like, we spent time talking on Tuesday about the Warriors doing well and the non-other guys. And I thought that the Nuggets fared better in those circumstances than the Lakers did. Now, the Lakers bench is not exactly their strength either, but I thought they did okay.
Yeah, a couple things stood out to me. Valanciunas was 4 or 5 from the field.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it before, that really the only effective group they've had without Jokic was DeMarcus Cousins. And Valanciunas isn't that level of usage hog, but he at least is like a solid pick and roll center. He can get a few offensive rebounds, which he did in this game, but he's actually giving Jamal Murray someone that he can run pick and roll with, right? Like that was not DeAndre Jordan these last few years. Like someone who actually is going to lay the wood on a screen, can then just like duck in, maybe get an offensive rebound, post up a little bit too, potentially. So yeah, he was effective. And I think he's going to shoot a pretty high percentage this year, but giving, especially Jamal Murray, because that's been our big carp about Murray, is that he hasn't been able to carry these non-Jokic groups. And today he was pretty effective in those minutes as well, with Jokic off the floor. Today, Jamal Murray had 11 points on 5 of 8 from the field, and Valanciunas was 4 or 5. So that combination put up 19 points just in the minutes that Jokic was off the floor. And then Aaron Gordon came in and had that 7-point flurry at the start of the fourth, and that was basically your scoring that got a little bit out of Hardaway as well. Bruce Brown, certainly some concerns that he might kind of be done. I thought he made a couple of nice plays defensively in the passing lanes. It was not quite the same force pushing it in transition as he was in the past. And, Peyton Watson was pretty much not heard from at all. He had 1 block shot. That was it. But, between Hardaway shooting the ball, coming off some screens, like they at least have guys who can get some decent shots up. I thought it was noteworthy that Jones played and Julian Strawther did not. That'll be something to keep an eye on as well. But I thought it was good early returns for that Nugget bench, that if the math can work out to where they're not getting outscored so badly when Jokic is off the floor, that it could actually let them blow people out every once in a while and make things easier for Nicole this year.
I thought it was also notable. I mean, David Adelman's chance running the team for this whole year instead of taking over late stream. We didn't see, you mentioned Strother, no Jalen Pickett, no Deron Holmes, no Hunter Tyson, some of the more prominent Calvin Booth selections late in his tenure. Now, Spencer Jones did play. I thought he looked fine. He in his stretch, he had one play where he should have kept the ball moving and dribbled it and kind of took the air out of the possession. But overall, I think he's a capable player who every team needs quality wing play in the worst way. And I think Spencer Jones can do some of that. And I don't care whether a guy's on a 2-way or on a fully guaranteed contract. If they can play and they're credible size, then they should be in the rotation.
One other thing that was pretty interesting tonight, the fast break game really didn't matter for either team. Neither team was really able to get out and run very often. And so it was 22 points in transition for the Nuggets, 19 for Golden State in a game like this where it was 137 to 131.
Well,
not a huge factor.
Part of that, though, is that the teams were combined 3 for 19 on threes in transition. And so the Nuggets were 1 of 7, the Warriors were 2 of 12. And those were included in the Warriors. Like, they had a stretch at the beginning of the fourth and they had a few other times where not only were they missing, but they were missing badly. Like Buddy Hield had 2 airball threes. Draymond Green had 1. The Warriors shot it well overall, 18 of 47. It helps when you have the best shooter of all time on your team. But both teams just missed a ton that would, other than Aaron Gordon and Stephen Curry, that normally you would expect them to make.
But the big thing that stuck out from the game phase standpoint was the Nuggets barely got any second chance points either. The Warriors actually won the possession game in this one. Golden State, they had 111 true shots to 101 for Denver. True shots, again, is basically just trips to the free throw line and shots. So it's a measure of basically who's winning the possession game. So Golden State won the possession game by 10. However, Denver, on the few offensive rebounds they did have, they took 6 shots off of offensive rebounds in the first 3 quarters of the game, and they scored 17 points on those 6 shots. They were 6 of 6 from the field, 5 of 5 from 3, and so that was a big factor. But this is also crazy, Danny. Golden State first shot half court offensive rating in this game, 1.23 points per play. That's not great for the Denver Nuggets.
And I thought it looked a little bit flat at the early part of the game, but then it kicked into gear. They had basically a 130 first shot half court offensive rating in the second half.
So let's talk about the end of the game now. And Golden State was still down by 7. Aaron Gordon came in, had another bucket. Steph Curry missed a wide open 3 that could have cut into things. And then probably the biggest play of the game, there are 2 in a row. There was Draymond airballing a 3, and then they got it back. No, I'm sorry, that they didn't score on that possession. Then Steph got the ball from Draymond on a handoff and got fouled, and we got asked here by Detlef, awesome name there. Oh wait, that's not the one we want. Here we go. Namson, no. I'm just gonna say is my best guess there. Namson no Lee. Okay. He asked as a crowd at Chase's Quiet on TV. Oh yeah, it was when Steph was like trying to exhort the crowd on after that 3-shot foul. That was like the first time they actually woke up at all. Like they were loud, like very at the beginning, but then everyone was just totally asleep. It was, I think Aaron Gordon his performance was so shocking. Like the crowd noise when Aaron Gordon was just getting these wide open threes, just kept knocking it down. Like the groans when he would start to shoot. By the end was it was hilarious to see how upset people were. But so that 3-shot foul was huge. And then that's when really the chess match began, and Kerr went to that group that had Kuminga at the 2. And I thought really watching the communication, Draymond, Butler, Horford on the back line, those 3 guys, Steph is been trying to be put in action forever. He was involved. They just and the thing was they had different matchups. They had guys who could switch up. Kuminga could be on Murray. Then they went with Draymond on Murray as well. And then seeing Denver try to deal with that, and Murray and Jokic, who've been together now for 10 seasons as well. Gordon has been there for 5 years. Christian Brown's been there for a long time. David Adelman has been there forever. So these two incredibly connected, smart teams going up against one another on that defensive end. I loved it. I'll play the audio for the podcast people now. I asked Draymond about it. He was kind enough to say hello to me after I grabbed the microphone. But yeah, you'll hear it on the later podcast what he had to say. But basically, he just said, yeah, like this level of experience, it's just such a luxury for them to have. But what stood out to you about the end of the game?
Denver was going to, I would call it a 3-man game, which was Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, and whoever Stephen Curry was guarding. At first, it looked like it was just they were using Christian Brown as a screener. No, they were using whoever Steph Curry was guarding. Sometimes it was Brown, sometimes it was
they tried hiding him on Johnson most of the way, and then they tried to switch him on Brown, and they put Brown in the action. But Brown, like I do think eventually they're going to need to weaponize Cam Johnson more as that second screener and then pop man on those plays. And again, he was just kind of a deer in the headlights just because of how weird the game was. And like, this is his first high pressure game with this team. Like, I think he'll be a lot better with that. I think he can maybe even be more effective than Michael Porter Jr. on some of those plays, because he can also put the ball on the deck if he catches it with no one in front of him and make a play. So I do think that they've always just like put everyone out of the way of Jokic and Murray. And I think that involving a worse defender, especially against teams that aren't as smart as Golden State, should be something they should look at.
And so I thought that was the most interesting wrinkle when Denver had the ball, except for the unusual dynamic that, and this you could say to an extent was true on both ends of the floor, that especially relative to his own standard, which is incredibly high, Nikola Jokic was the GOAT of this game, where he were a couple plays where it was his specific defensive flaws, which led to shots for Curry. There was a big three that Curry hit to tie the game at 117 when Jokic dropped too far back and Christian Brown couldn't get through the screen. And so if you have a big who's a little bit more mobile or can do something different, maybe they could read it. And I mean, Stephen Curry might have made the shot anyway, but it was an easier shot than it would have been. But the more shocking part was not there. It was in both regulation and overtime, Jokic missing shots that he normally makes. I mean, he had a couple around from the dotted line that missed. Like, was one of them we're both like, oh, okay, this is done now, and he missed that. And then he bricked a wide open three, Al Horford, in overtime. He just completely left him, and Jokic could have made a three. I believe that would have tied the game, and just didn't get close.
No, I agree with you that Jokic had some moments where he would normally make shots, and as I rewatched it, because we can't see it from our nosebleed seats, like how many of them were just like almost down and came out, especially his threes in the overtime. Going back to what you were saying about defensively, though, I mean, they were just getting completely lit up. It looked like it was that 2022 playoff series all over again. And the thought was that might be in the rearview mirror against this team. And that's because they're playing with, Facundo Campazzo and Monte Morris and Austin Rivers back then. But no, Christian Brown really was no better. And Aaron Gordon was also too slow to say in front of Steph. Cam Johnson not going to get that done either. And Jokic is not as good, I would say, as he was a couple of years ago defensively. But I thought there was really a shortage of tactics. They were like, okay, we'll try to put him on this guy. We'll try to put him on this guy. Eventually, they even tried Jimmy Butler, and then Butler was able to make the play too. That was honestly, Butler might have been the best, but then Butler hit a three to ice the game at the very end of things. But I think they need to go zone. They need to go box to one. Maybe the feeling is, well, we don't want to show that at this point in time. Although maybe this game will be the difference between who has home court in a playoff series against these teams. We'll see. I think Denver's maybe a little more built for the long haul of the regular season than Golden State is, particularly just from an injury standpoint. But nonetheless, like they just didn't have it, right? I mean, they tried to do a little bit of pre-switching, but not really enough. And or you have Nikola Jokic trap him harder, and or you say, all right, we're going to get beat at the point of attack, but then we're going to pack the paint after that, and at least force Steph Curry when he gets in the lane to kick it out to like Jonathan Kuminga or Butler for a three. Let's just put the other three guys in the paint. Like they really just nothing that they tried even remotely worked against Steph. And again, Steph was awesome. That's like some of the shots he hit, like that tying three.
The tying three, which I think I saw one thing that it was from 34 feet. Like it was just he shot it so early that the Nuggets, like we could have theoretically, if we've been doing a live show on it, talked about how the like, are you going to foul? If so, when? And it's like, no, he's just going to shoot. He's just going to shoot it from 34 feet. And Denver, there were a couple of those like, oh, it's the regular season. How much are you really going to show? Everything else. And one that you caught immediately in the moment, which was because it doesn't feel like we're going to go straight possession by possession through the end of this game, was after that Curry shot, which was surprising in terms of its how quickly it happened. That because ideally you're not going to give up a three in that circumstance, but so shot clock goes off, was a tactical mistake by Adelman where the Warriors are down three. You put your players on the floor to try to get a three and to draw the defense out. And the shot clock is off. Denver calls a timeout, which allows the Warriors to completely change their personnel. In fact, they even take Stephen Curry off the floor. They go with Gary Payton II in his slot. And so if what you're going to do in that circumstance is take the clock all the way down, presumably the ball is going to find Nikola Jokic, which is what ended up happening, then you don't need a lot of time, like a timeout, to set that up. You just run it with better personnel, or more accurately, worse personnel for the other team, and just make it happen.
And the Warriors would have been completely screwed from a personnel standpoint. They had like Hield and Podziemski and Steph all out there on that play. Now, I asked David Adelman after the game. I'll put that audio in as well for podcast listeners about why he did that. And I usually try to frame these questions in a way where I'm not just like being critical in the way I'm asking it. But in this case, I didn't really have a way to ask it without that. Because I was like, yeah, they had their offensive players on the floor. Why'd you go the way you did? And he basically said that the reason he went that way was because A, he just wanted to make sure they got the last shot. B, he wanted to just kind of calm the team down. Like, traditional reasons for a timeout. I don't think either of those things were particularly compelling. But what he did say is, like, I wanted to make sure that we ran a twist with Nikola Jokic, changed the angle of the screen at the last minute, which, by the way, guys sprinting into screens and changing the angle, that's been one of the biggest things that I've seen. Not that this is some new invention, but every team is doing that really, really hard with guys just absolutely sprinting into screens. Again, like another one of the counters for the NBA this year where it just, how do you compete in the modern game? Well, you do it harder than you did before. There's just
that seems like a setup for the next,
right?
That seems like a setup for the other game we're going to talk about.
Yes. And he noted that they got a great shot, and they did. It was a great pass from Jamal Murray. The whole reason they set it that way was so that they could open up the pocket, even with the Warriors switching with Draymond guarding Jamal Murray. They were not able to prevent that pass, and Jokic got a great look, and it just went in and out. So while I thought the process was not great because they probably could have got something even easier, but like he trusted his team to get a good shot exactly the way he wanted to, even against great defensive players, like because they're able to get Steph off the floor too. They did. So in any event, the other thing I want to talk about too from regulation is Aaron Gordon hits a three to put him up three before Steph's miracle shot. And they had run this once already in crunch time. Their old favorite, the play that just tortured the league back in 2023, the Jamal give it to Jokic at the left elbow, Jamal Murray back screen for Aaron Gordon, who's a big lob or duck in threat. You have to deal with him. Then Murray comes off the screen, except after Golden State guarded it pretty well the first time, they instead had Murray flip the screen, Gordon pop out to the 3-point line and get a wide open three, which
Yep.
was definitely not in the arsenal 2 years ago. So that was like, to add that wrinkle to that play is going to be pretty ridiculous to deal with. So what did you have from the overtime?
So I think that watching it again and remembering some of the Jokic misses that he had one where it was early in the overtime. Jokic gets it. Draymond's like right in his jersey, and Jokic hits it from the dotted line anyway. And I'm just like, that's the Jokic I know. That's the type of shot
Oh yeah, that was just another example of the great chess match where Jamal Murray's dribbling up top. I thought he had a great passing game overall.
Mm-hmm.
They had run the pick and roll. Butler had started on Murray. Jokic goes down towards the baseline. At the exact moment that Butler switches out with Draymond onto Jokic, Jokic cuts up to the free throw line, gets it, and scores over Draymond. It was just perfect timing, knowing exactly what they were going to do to try to kick out Butler and get Draymond onto Jokic. And it's not like the Warriors executed that badly. Just the Nuggets were like slightly ahead.
And so there were three key possessions where Denver didn't score in the overtime that I want to go through just a little bit. So the first one, they tried to use Jamal Murray as the ball. They tried to use Christian Brown as a screener, but the screen was set too close to both the sideline and the backcourt. So the Warriors basically just insta-blitzed. And Jamal Murray rushes the pass to Cam Johnson. At this point, the Warriors are up 1. And Curry deflects it. It goes to Jonathan Kuminga. He catches the deflection and then finishes it, does a Euro step. So the Warriors go up 3. And so that was a failure of execution.
Yeah, I mean, that was the biggest play of the game in retrospect.
I agree. And so that was a pretty big mistake. I mean, basically they gave the Warriors an advantage by setting the screen at the wrong place. And so then you made it, and it was not only a 2-point mistake, you could argue.
But that was great connectedness by the Warriors.
Sure.
I mean, a lot of teams will trap against the sideline. Like, that's sort of an automatic for a lot of teams. But just to be ready to do that immediately to get the pressure down. And then the next time, Murray rejected it along the sideline and then went right through Draymond for a layup, which was a great play. But
it was.
The other thing, they had Steph on Jokic. They switch him out after I think Steph had gotten stripped by Jokic on a cut that could have iced the game. And Jonathan Kuminga actually blocked Nikola Jokic as he went in, which was so.
Well, again, and before that, Kuminga's the person who actually scrammed Stephen Curry, something I don't think I'd ever see Jonathan Kuminga do.
Yeah, no, he was pretty locked in. I think this version of him, it's actually like, it's almost been good enough that I'm sort of like, maybe they should keep him. Let's see how it goes here. Maybe they don't need to trade him after all that. Poor Jonathan. Okay, so I think that's all I got on this one. Couple of questions that we had here. Nicholas says, I noticed they're not trying to focus up Jokic as much, and if they're not going to do that, then the weight he's added has been detrimental. Yeah, I mean, I think he could get back to being a little bit thinner than he was, but also he was never really great at guarding in space, and they will post up Jokic more. Like, this was, as I said, a weird game where they just didn't go to that as much, and the Warriors have pretty good post defenders. And Nikola Jokic, he wants to play more team ball. If someone on his team has it going, he's going to more just kind of take what the game gives him than trying to dominate. They probably could have used a little more of that late. But again, the shots he usually didn't go in. And then also, another question was, put your center on Butler to keep him out of the offense. And so could the Butler-Curry pick and roll become more dangerous? I think so, especially
if they did it a couple times late.
Depth of the screener. Yeah. But I do think I would. That's an interesting tactic for sure. And it is because Draymond is just so good at cleaning up Steph Curry on these screens that it's you want to see if it's gonna happen. And also, I think, especially if you don't have a wing who can handle Butler physically, it's almost better to just put a center on him. So at least, like, I thought Zach Edey was pretty good on it. Now, the more Golden State sees that tactic, Jimmy's very smart. Like, they'll find some counters to it. We're not going to go through every single possession of it because we were at the game. We didn't get a chance to really, really lock in on Indiana OKC. Another double overtime game, the first time in NBA history that a team's first 2 games, OKC's, went to double overtime. Injury issues for OKC, no Alex Caruso in the concussion protocol. Cason Wallace dealing with the sore knee already. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was still amazing in this one, put up 50. He's completely carried them to these wins. But I mean, the bigger takeaway was just that even with Andrew Nembhard going out just before halftime with a shoulder injury and getting the Mark Spears retweeted death, that he still, the Pacers still were able to be the Pacers, which is somewhat encouraging. We'll see how long they can keep it up. This is opening night, and they know this team well, but like they look like they're going to be pretty watchable, and that was encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, not a reference for everybody, but the Pacers are basically the ship of Theseus at this point. Like
Who would that not be a reference for? I mean, are you implying because it didn't happen, and it would also, if it did happen 5,000 years ago, that it might not be for everyone? I really don't understand that.
I mentioned to Nate, well, because we watched, we were at Chase together, that I was going to bring this up, so I won't go through the whole thing on it. You can, but basically, just to walk you through before and into this game, what the Pacers didn't have. So Tyrese Haliburton out for the season. Miles Turner in Milwaukee. TJ McConnell not available right now due to a hamstring issue. He's not going to be back before probably mid-November at the earliest. Nembhard goes out of the game early with this shoulder issue. Isaiah Jackson picks up 4 fouls in 8 minutes and basically is just not heard from again. Aaron Nesmith fouls out early because somebody has to take on the Miles Turner part of Rick Carlisle's heart. I mean, Nesmith also filled that role before. And so it's Ben Shepherd playing 39 minutes. We'll talk about Benedict Mathurin, who had an impressive performance, drawing fouls again, as he did seemingly throughout the playoffs. Siakam stepping up, and also the Pacers still being the Pacers. Now, you can't rush the Thunder. You can't make them do quite everything. They had 14 turnovers in a double overtime game. But I cannot overstate how impressed I am that even with that amount of talent drain, that the Pacers were still able to make life so hard on a team who does that to everyone else.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that was most impressive to me is they had 43 chances to run off of misses, and they ran on 25 of them. They weren't all that efficient, but that's a 58% run percentage for them on Thunder misses, and the Thunder are great at getting back. Now, the Thunder, with all their guys out, going with the 2 bigs and Shai kind of walking it up every single time as their only threat, the Thunder just have basically stopped running these first 2 games, although they were very efficient when they did it. So the Pacers definitely were pretty solid there. But then also to put up 0.95 points per possession in the half court was impressive. And Ben Mathurin was a big part of that. And he got to the foul line a ton. He got fouled, Ben Mathurin, 13 times in this game, 15 to 17 from the line. And basically all of them took place. Like, we can look at the foul locations. All of them took place within 8 feet of the basket.
It's incredibly impressive. And Mathurin being able to do that against a big team, and even without some of their guys, a very good defensive team. And on top of that, Mathurin hitting 3 of 8 from 3. And some of those were more of the kind of self-created variety, which is not something that I necessarily expected him to have in his game. And so for Mathurin and Siakam to go a combined 6 for 14 on threes, like, you'll live with that every single day.
Yeah, now the one thing that the Pacers were not the Pacers on was the assisting. They had 21 assists on 46 field goals. And part of that was because they shot extremely poorly from 3-point range. Another interesting thing, Pacers centers were just about as bad as we thought they would be. No Pacers center played more than 12 minutes in the basketball game. And they just went to a ton of Obi Toppin at center down the end, and of course through all of the overtimes. they were able to make up for that a little bit by playing a little more Jarris Walker, who played 30 minutes. I mean, that seems like the most he's ever played in a real game that mattered. So, between Siakam, Toppin, who doesn't really do many of the center things, and Walker, maybe you have enough size to get by on the front line. So then Mathurin and Ben Shepherd is now their healthy point guard. Talon Peter, come on down. He actually, I think, was in the rotation even before that. They still went in the end 11 deep, and would have done 10 without Nembhard going down. Aaron Nesmith also fouled out in 27 minutes. So, don't have a ton to say on OKC. This is not great for them to start the season like this. Shea did have 55. He got fouled 15 times. They didn't have anyone to guard him. Got to the foul line 26 times in this game. But for me, Indiana, at least for one night, and again, we'll have to see if they can keep it up throughout the course of the season. And let's see if Siakam can put up 32 a night. And Mathurin has been very hot and cold in his career. They're going to have to give him the ball, so maybe it'll just continue. But that's it was encouraging if you're a Pacers fan that they were able to maintain their culture, and we'll just have to see how long they can do that, how long Nembhard is going to be out. That shoulder injury did not look good. If you missed it, he was kind of reaching in, and Shea went for a spin move, and as he went to the spin move, he caught Mathurin's arm basically in between his body and shoulder and spun away. So Nembhard's arm got pulled backwards, kind of like this, and that was that could definitely lead to a bad shoulder injury. He had to leave immediately. It might be one of those. Hopefully, it's not a surgical thing, and that he can just rehab it. But that's the Mark Spears tweet didn't make me feel particularly optimistic about it. Anything else you had on this one?
Well, one other thing we could say about the Thunder is that you and I will be broadcasting Thunder Mavericks on the strategy stream next. So that'll be Monday at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. It'll be a lot of fun. We're gonna spend talking about Cooper Flagg, which will be fun to watch to really break down one of his
Flagg get his first half bucket
Wednesday night show. But you can watch that with us on the NBA strategy stream.
Okay, so let's talk about the gambling thing now. Gamblor has struck the NBA, and it seems like this is a massive deal. I mean, the head of the FBI did do a press conference on it, so that certainly added to that this was a huge story. But it was one of those things where, like, front page of the New York Times, here's a live blog. ESPN obviously did their stories on it as well. So if you really want to get into the nitty gritty of exactly what the allegations are, Dan wrote about that. We'll probably try to paraphrase it some here. The three people NBA wise that you would know who were involved were number one, Chauncey Billups, number two, Damon Jones, and number three, Terry Rozier, who already had some allegations about it. I think Rozier is probably the simpler of these. Do you want to roll through what it is that he specifically is alleged to have done?
Yes, and I will mention, if anybody truly enjoys, as you know, going to law school, you get into some of this. One of the most fun things about reading the complaints here, the indictments here, is the aliases involved, which includes Scary Terry for Terry Rozier in there. There's some more colorful ones for other individuals in these alleged schemes. But the Terry Rozier one is very straightforward, which is the crux of it is that I'm just trying to get the date right. In March of 2023, Rozier allegedly told one of the other named defendants in this that he was going to take himself out of the game early due to a supposed injury and not play. Noted that this was not something that was known to the Hornets, who he was playing for at the time, or anything else. He, only played 9 minutes when he'd been averaging about 35 a game that year. And so the, significant bets on the under, and those unders hit.
Yeah. He left the game after 9 minutes, and basically it was kind of a fake injury. So all of his stuff hit the under, and so there's some very specific allegations here. Again, allegations are allegations. You got to prove it all in a court of law. But essentially, what this said is that a bunch of people bet on his unders, and most damningly, he paid for an associate of his to travel to Philadelphia, collect the proceeds from the scheme, and then this guy drove to Rozier's home in Charlotte and counted the money with him, and Rozier got a share of the proceeds. You know, it is interesting that Rozier had been allowed to play this entire time. The NBA, of course, doesn't have the same investigative tools available as the federal government. We've heard that and found that out many a time here. Rozier's attorney said that his client is not a gambler and looks forward to winning this fight. No, well, he didn't gamble. It was,
well, it's not gambling if you know you're going to win.
So yeah, there's language in the NBA operations manual. Obviously, all this is prohibited. Everyone knows it's prohibited. Seth had some good tweets on that today. So this to me is, as far as the NBA, easily the worst of this news. This is a real player, a guy who had a huge contract, made a ton of money in his career, over $100 million, doing this for what exactly? I'm just not sure what the motive would be for him. Like Jonte Porter, he got into some debts. He was threatened. He didn't really have much money. This is so part of the solution to this has been to say, oh, well, we're not going to have prop bets on some of these little used guys and stuff of that ilk. But this is a guy who was making plenty of money, and maybe he was annoyed by the team tanking in 2023, and whatever, it didn't matter. He was pissed off the organization. Who knows what his motive is? I'd be very interested to find out what that would be if we ever do. He has been placed on immediate leave, so certainly very troubling allegations for him. And if all of these allegations are proved to be true, pretty much open and shut case, he's going to get banned for life, just like Jonte Porter. And I find this far more troubling than Jonte Porter because he's also like a veteran player as well. It's just, what the fuck are you doing? Like, this is insane.
And yeah, I mean, Rozier at the juncture of this alleged thing, that was his age 28 season in the league, and like he was on his, he was making significant money for the Hornets at the time, and it's wild, and we'll get more, and the specificity in the indictment for that stuff is pretty telling. That doesn't mean it needs to be proven in a court of law, but it's striking.
Yeah, and again, I apologize. We've been at Chase Center. I haven't had a chance to read every single thing about this yet. I'm sure we will fill in more on that. Getting a few comments about some more reporting that I haven't personally verified. So I'll try to keep buttoned up on this. But one thing that has come up is the idea of like, what did Charlotte know? What did the league know? Because Rozier, you'll recall, in what already looked like one of the more asinine trades and was at the time, the Miami Heat gave up a lotto protected first rounder to Charlotte to get him and save money through Kyle Lowry at the 24 deadline.
Yeah, 10 months after the alleged incident happened.
So what the league knew, what Charlotte knew at the time of that trade is certainly something I'd very much want to know as a Miami Heat fan. Although, frankly, given the way the trades worked out, it's probably if he gets banned and his salary gets wiped off the books for the Heat, that would be nice. But it does expire this year, and Rozier, maybe due to these allegations is part of why he's never been able to get going in Miami. But the other reason was that they never should have traded for him. So that's him. That's pretty easy. I mean, I'll kind of give my opinion on the whole holistic effect of this and how important it is and all that afterwards. Let's speak now about Chauncey Billups. By far the biggest name. He has been placed on leave, as well as head coach of the Portland Trailblazers. Tiago Splitter is going to take over. I thought it was pretty funny, actually, as an aside, that Sean was like, well, they gave serious consideration to hiring Nate Bjorkgren. I was like, oh, really? Nate Bjorkgren, the guy who had one of the more infamous one-season head coaching stints in NBA history, who is basically reviled by his players by the end as one of like the least emotionally intelligent coaches ever. Yeah, that's who you want in taking over your team in a crisis. No, I think they're probably going to go with Thiago Splitter. They may have given consideration to it and then remembered all those things and decided that they were not going to consider it
Yeah,
anymore.
Thiago Splitter, who ran Paris Basket last year, like who was the head coach
after Thomas Isolo, and I'm sure kept up a bunch of his stuff. And obviously, Splitter also had a great career playing internationally and comes from the Spurs system, all that. So, so here's what happened with Billups. We'll get to the stuff about that's not basketball related momentarily, but as far as I can tell, the only thing that's specifically basketball betting related was that Billups knew that the Blazers were going to tank and sit all their guys in a game. And he told that to an associate of his who then used that money for gambling purposes. Now, that is definitely a violation by Chauncey Billups. Again, Seth is clear on this. The operations man is clear on this. You get all these trainings that you cannot tell anybody outside of the team this sort of information because you don't know what they're going to do with it. They could use it to gamble. Did Billups know that this person liked to gamble, that they would use it to gamble? We don't know. He will surely say that he didn't. I'm not even certain that that aspect of it, if he didn't know that it was for the purpose of gambling, is technically illegal. So again, I'm not exactly that up on like what is a crime there and what's not. It's illegal from an NBA standpoint and certainly be worthy of suspension and should be. But that part of it is kind of like you got a little plausible deniability.
So
there.
Yes and no. So first of all, like the wrinkle of this part of it. So Chauncey Billups, most of the ink on him, well, then the part that actually uses his name is the other indictment. So not the I'm calling them the Rozier indictment and the Billups indictment, not that they're necessarily the principal figures. But for me, so the thing that really puts this in a different light is based on the allegations. None of these have been tried in a court of law yet. Who he told is Eric Ernest, who is a named defendant in both indictments. And Ernest is far more detailed in the.
Yeah, so Ernest is another one of these shadowy figures who's like involved in the illegal poker game as well.
Yes, and so
okay, all right. That actually, I apologize that detail escaped me. Yeah, that is rather damning that you're involved in a legal poker game with this guy and you tell him you might have an idea that what he's going to do.
Yeah. It's okay. So there's a more generous way of like a more generous way of framing this that part of this for Billups and a less generous. And so I want to start with the more generous, which is that, and because of course we can only deal with the allegations as they are, which is the decision to sit these players was made. I'm not saying properly in terms of the moral imperative of tanking. I'm saying that the decision was made without anything else in play. Billups conveyed the information improperly, that there's no real argument there based on the manuals and everything else. He did it improperly. So that is bad. That is very bad. But the thing that I think is going to be like the really concerning part of this, and notable that the legal liability for Billups in this component of it versus the poker game is much more limited if it exists at all, but in the court of the NBA is very significant, is the other part of this, which is when a coach, and why I personally, based on this, I'm not predicting this because we don't know everything, that if any part of this gets proven, I would be stunned if Chauncey Billups ever coached another NBA game, is because there's the darker possibility, which is that a decision is made for an illicit purpose, meaning you are able to, because the coach has the decisions on the rotation, you decide. So the example I thought of was, so this is not a player that Chauncey Billups coaches, but it's a hypothetical. Joel Embiid or Al Horford, those guys are playing. They're not playing on both ends of a back-to-back this year. Let's say you were a coach and you had a connection to a figure and you told them ahead of time, the game we're not going to play Embiid in of these two is this one, and he's going to play in this one. Well, that would create an opportunity for certain people to potentially, not definitively, gain a financial advantage. And theoretically, maybe they could make that decision for different purposes, and that decision might make it less likely for their team to win the game. Like there are pathways down this that maybe could not be proven and anything else. And so the concern is that if somebody is willing to do this, do the more generous framing of it, that it's a pretty thin membrane to doing the second, and the second one really messes with the competitive balance of the league.
Yeah, there certainly is a slippery slope aspect to this, and you do wonder, like, okay, did he just do this one time? Maybe he just did it because he was pissed off that they were going to just start tanking, and he knew that his job situation might be tenuous and affected, and like it just kind of sucks to have to do that as a coach. We've seen that tension many a time between coach and organization, and usually it would be an organizational decision if a guy's going to miss a game. The coach would have some input there, to be sure, but certainly based on what's out there right now, there's no indication that he caused anything to happen. And that's where, to me, it would really bother me if the like stuff starts getting caused to happen. Now, none of this is good, obviously, and Chauncey Billups, he's never going to coach the NBA again. It's just not going to happen. He probably will never have a job again in the NBA as well. I mean, also this poker game, which is kind of ancillary, frankly, other than just the fact that there's an involvement with shadowy figures now. Billups, I'm going to read his indignant statement from his attorney in full. Anyone who knows Chauncey Billups knows he is a man of integrity. Men of integrity do not cheat and defraud others. I guess maybe the woman in 1997 just didn't know him. Maybe that's what it was. To believe that Chauncey Billups did what the federal government is accusing him of is to believe that he would risk his Hall of Fame legacy, his reputation, and his freedom. He would not jeopardize those things for anything, let alone a car game. This is a good statement. Furthermore, Chauncey Billups has never and would never gamble on basketball games, provide insider information, or sacrifice the trust of his team and the league, as it would tarnish the game he has devoted his entire life to. Chauncey Billups has never backed down. He does not plan to do so now. He will fight these allegations with the same tenacity that marked his 28-year career. We look forward to our day in court. And so this is the same defense that everyone is using on Steve Ballmer at first. They're just like, well, he's so powerful. Like no one could be this stupid. People just do stupid shit like this all the time. Like clearly he just did not have the level of character required. If in fact this poker game thing is, we don't even really need to get into that much. It's more just because it illustrates the link to gambling. Now, surely if you were arrested for this, you would have to be suspended anyway. And, being involved in illegal gambling of other kinds is also a huge no-no with the league, and you would deserve a massive suspension even for that. And I think it's more likely that he could end up going to jail for that purpose. But anyway, like I find that somewhat ancillary, at least to like my own caring about this. Like people in the NBA just do dumb illegal shit all the time.
Yeah, it's basically Billups' life versus his basketball life, and because of our roles, we're focused more on his basketball life.
Yeah, and certainly you might say that those who questioned the hiring of Billups in part due to his past and were poo-pooed, maybe there might be some indication that his character was not the highest, and the Blazers have now seen those chickens come home to roost to a degree. All right, so I think we've gone through. I guess we got to do the Damon Jones shit too, huh?
Yeah, and as far as and please correct me if I'm wrong, the Damon Jones component of this is that Jones, who played in the league for a long time, was connected with LeBron James, former teammate, and then was connected with the Lakers during the 2023, the 22-23 and 23-24 seasons. And so Jones allegedly sold or attempted to sell injury information, which appears to be on both LeBron James and at one point Anthony Davis, for to try to gain money off them.
Yeah, and he apparently squandered all of his NBA winnings and was just kind of around LeBron as a hanger on from back in his playing days, and had access to this information. I mean, that's it's worth noting that like he was just around LeBron, but was not actually a team employee, and so that's when you're
Yeah,
not accountable to the team, it's more
the
likely
term
something like this could happen.
the term unofficial assistant coach is in the indictment, and that isn't
Yeah,
it's notable framing.
and he has been an assistant before as well. So,
Right.
but basically, this is just he had the injury news and found a way to try to make some money off of it. So, all right, that's what we've got out there. Jones was also involved in the poker game. We don't really have time to get into the specifics of the poker game, although I certainly find it uh, quite interesting. I want to know more about the technology of these like illegal card shufflers, like contact lenses that could see the cards, all this shit. I didn't get into that too much, but how much do you care about this?
I think that it is a and there have been many other reminders of this, of the challenges of having gambling for sports. Then it has proliferated during this time, but it existed for a longer period of time. And so the just as in other fields where insider information has real monetary value, that creates complicated incentives, and there are point shaving scandals in college and other things over time. So, but I think that it seems if the allegations already were remotely true, this is going to end Terry Rozier's NBA career and probably cost him a ton of money, and it could potentially end Chauncey Billups. And so I think that it is a reminder of the complicated relationships, the complicated forces that are pressuring on. And I mean that potentially things like this could derail, if not outright end, the careers and possibly the free lives in certain ways, depending on jail time and all that, of two individuals who had seemingly the money and all that to just not be involved in this stuff. It's a reminder of how that can happen even when there isn't even when there isn't the leverage that it appears there might have been with John Tabor.
I guess for me, like we had a couple comments here just in the YouTube, and just this is the FBI director, and I think doing a press conference, and it was pointed out in the comments, which I think is worth at least considering. That'll be in the back of my mind that there is a certain enemies list way of dealing with things
Sure.
with the new administration, and for the FBI director to be doing a press conference about an investigation like this is not something that you would normally see. So I mean, I think they have the goods. It would surprise me if they're just making up this evidence, but just something to keep in mind that maybe there will be some things that come out about this that are not entirely true. So my eyebrows are raised a little bit more than they ordinarily would be under a different administration, to be sure. But other than that, I actually don't really care that much about this. Like from my own personal fandom and coverage, like obviously we're going to cover it. And it's not good, but it also, none of this much affects to me like my viewing experience, where I'm going to be watching the next game and be like, oh my God, like, is this actually like, are these guys really trying? Like, could this all just be controlled by gamblers? Like, are these guys point shaving? Because we've seen Rozier, for like a meaningless Charlotte Hornets game, and Jonte Porter, like, yeah, that affects the product a little bit on the floor, not to the point where I really care that much about those players and that point in the season. Malik Beasley actually was involved in a team that was really doing something. That we'll see whether he eventually becomes part of this or not. It seems like that's a whole separate thing. But for me, I'm just like, essentially the crime here is that gamblers are going to lose money and the gambling situation is kind of rigged. And it's like, well, yeah, no shit. like, and I don't have a moral problem with gambling companies. And I think, whether the league should have an association with these and whether gambling should be legal are separate things. I do think that with it being legal, they do have a point that it's easier to catch it because you have to use your real name, and these are like companies that are actually, you would rather that all these people be betting legally than illegally with bookmakers, when you can really get into more trouble, because then you're just never going to get caught, and then now you have like, debts to underworld figures and stuff along those lines. So to me, like, I don't actually really care that much about this. Like, yeah, it sucks that like bettors are losing money, but like also, like, you're not going to make that much money anyway. If you're really that good at it, you're getting it limited, and then you got to find someone to put money down for you if you're really that awesome at it. And like, I know there are a lot of people who gamble who like it, and I'm not like against that and doing that small stakes, and like, the question of whether it's good for our society that everyone has gambling available is one that I think we should get into more. But I'm not morally against gambling. And yeah, you know what? Like, the NBA injury reporting has been bullshit. It's been bullshit forever. They're supposedly getting more serious about it, but like, if they're gonna, and is it fair to gamblers that it's bullshit? No, it's not. But that's the deal. Everyone knows that's the deal. And the fact that some guys made some money and are now going to go to jail for it, and like the casinos got bilked out of a little bit more, like, that's all. It's just kind of ancillary to my fandom, honestly.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, and I mean I'll kind of table for me the kind of the moral thing of the proliferation of gambling. There's an interesting conversation that can be had on it. I just don't know that 1 a.m. Pacific time is the time to necessarily have it. But I think that it is also it's a fascinating reminder in terms of the NBA. I brought this up in terms of like how people could get dragged down and of just kind of where things can shake out. And I mean, it's also like maybe part with the ripple of this is that I hope that it leads to people being like, hey, if you do this, you're going to get caught. Now, there seems to be more of a paper trail in this than there might be in some of them. But if it could scare people off of making mistakes that they don't need to make in the first place, like that is in some ways, that is my big hope, is that this, you hope that everything that isn't true and everything, all that kind of stuff. But that the existence of this kind of stuff, whether there ends up being convictions or not, is a deterrent to future players, that they'd be like, hey, you're going to do this, you're not actually going to get that much out of it, and you're going to get caught, and it could ruin your career.
No, I mean, I think that's definitely a good thing, that it's actually this benign. If there is this massive FBI investigation, this is noted in the comments. I was going to say the same thing, that the Ballmer thing is a way bigger deal to me. The Clippers caps are
for competitive bounce.
Really,
absolutely.
Like, that where Kawhi Leonard is going to sound like that type of cheating actually bothers me way more. So yeah, if it comes out that like these games are not, obviously the Donaghy thing is bigger. Like, people are like, oh, this is the biggest thing in like NBA history. It was a story. Like, no, it's not even close to that. To me, I mean, obviously it's getting a lot of coverage right now, and so things are as big as people decide to make them. I said that about the Ballmer thing too, but yeah, the Ballmer thing I care about way more. So I guess I just ultimately am not that like concerned. I didn't go to the game today being like, oh, like, what is Nikola Jokic, like, is he clean, or are they really trying to win this game? Like, that's so it would take a lot level of concern, then it doesn't bother me all that much. That's kind of that. Let me see if I had any. Yeah. So this is what I was going to say too. I mean, I do think that if they want to avoid stuff like this in the future, the league needs to improve their processes around injury reporting. And I've said, it's like, Windhorse has been all over this too, that it's total bullshit. And part of the reason I don't gamble is because it's total bullshit. And if I were a gambler, I would be pissed off. But guess what? Like, people still gamble. It's not like people are like, no, this game is rigged. People have inside information, or you don't know whether a guy's healthy or not. Like, people still gamble anyway. Like, it has not hurt the league's bottom line at all to not get serious about this injury stuff. And so you have all these different agendas. There's, agents don't want their guy to get an injury prone label, and we're gonna call it a procedure instead of surgery. We're gonna not even reveal that a guy had surgery, or so there's that. There's just the vanity of the players and their supposed business concerns. Then there's the competitive balance where you'll see bullshit like, oh, we're going to mark this guy questionable the game after he got hurt, and then he's going to miss an entire month right after that. But for that game, we're going to make the other team prepare for this guy by marking him questionable. Or Mark Williams just is out for the entire season. Or, Trey Mann had sciatica. Draymond Green just said, which no one did. Trey Mann is, it's just a back injury. We don't know when he's coming back. So, all the Joel stuff over the years. And so if you really want to get serious about it, what you do, I think, and I haven't thought about this that much, is all injury reporting would be made by an objective NBA observer who would be basically a Chinese wall between him and everyone else in the league, and obviously, team management and stuff, but just someone who has access to every bit of players' medical information. That would have to be collectively bargained, but and that person from the league, not associated with the team, not team PR, they do the injury report based on their discussions with team medical personnel and access to the actual medical records. You have a neutral person, like the neutral person who does the concussion stuff in the NFL in theory. That's who does the injury report, not team PR. That's what I think you would have to do if you're to really get serious about this.
Yeah, and you think about the logistics and the cost and the kind of the medical information getting passed around and all that would happen. But it's, to get a system that would be what, that would be ideal. I think that's a very reasonable first shot at it. Sure.
Oh, we didn't mention this thing with the Magic too. That's the other one where an unnamed player allegedly leveraged his personal relationship with a Magic starter to learn that Orlando would sit its starters in a game that the Cavs already were going to sit their starters in 23. I think it was a pretty much a meaningless game. And then the Magic decided to sit all their starters. So your starters for the Magic were Paolo, Franz, Wendell Carter Jr., Gary Harris, and Markelle Fultz. And then we don't know who the unnamed NBA player is, but apparently the Magic starter is under no investigation. But even then, you should probably not be telling anyone else this stuff. I'm sure they'll reiterate that. So that we'll see whether we find out more about that specific information of who this unnamed player is. That's something that it could be more of interest. Again, no indication that changed anything that happened on the floor. So as long as the gambling tail is not wagging the dog of what's actually happening on the floor in a way that I care about, I'm not going to be too much pearl clutching on this. What do you think of my idea of just having neutral injury reporting?
I think it would be hard to execute, but it is a worthwhile goal.
Yeah. What about this whole, well, it was inevitable that this would happen with the leagues being with A, legalized gambling, and B, the leagues being in bed with the gambling companies now?
I don't think the leagues being in bed with the gambling companies, I mean, there are parts of it that I'm uncomfortable with, but in terms of it changing the behavior of the individuals allegedly involved in this, I don't think that it did. But in terms of the making gambling above board, making it easier to do in various jurisdictions, that increases the ways that people can profit from it, which increases certain motivations, which could increase the frequency. But if that, and I think that all of those things happen, but if they happen, and here, I mean, pending further information, and there's a lot that could happen both now and in the future. If the ways that has impacted on the floor is Terry Rozier leaving a game early and the Jonte Porter thing, that is in the, I would say, the tolerable amount of downside risk. There are lots of things that can lead to problems. If it's not a playoff game, it's not anything else. Yes, it's bad, but there are all sorts of bad things that can happen for, bad actors and various different things. And so I think that things being more visible does not necessarily make them more powerful. And I think that there is some conflation of the two. And it's funny because I'm not somebody who supports the prevalence of gambling, but that doesn't mean that you can then jump to the conclusion that because it is more prevalent that it's leading to all of these big problems.
Yeah, I think your better argument is just that it's predatory on mostly young men who can't afford it, and it's like ruining people's lives. That's your argument for why this shouldn't be happening. And again, I'm like, gambling's been legal in Europe forever. It's been legal in Nevada. Like I'm on this specific thing, I come down with more like, yeah, there's a lot of people who really enjoy it. There are a number of vices that people do that a lot of people really enjoy that they take too far. Gambling is one of those. Like, there are very many things that can ruin people's lives if abused, that are also things that we as a society have decided to tolerate. And I think, to me, gambling is one of those things. But yeah, this idea that the leagues, like, everyone loves to just, oh, they're so hypocritical. They're so hypocritical. Like, see, they were against us for so long, and now they're just taking their money and see what happened. Like, I agree with you. I think it's pretty attenuating. The furthest you could say is like, well, it's more visible now, and so people are having these ideas that this is a good idea, right? Or like, but Terry Rozier and Damon Jones and Chauncey Billups, like, did Chauncey Billups, who's made hundreds of millions of dollars, whatever he has, or Terry Rozier, who's made hundreds of millions of dollars, like, were they like, oh, well, now that the NBA is like, I didn't know this gambling thing existed before. Now that I saw a FanDuel sign in the arena, though, like, yeah, you know what, this might be a pretty good idea. Like,
that's how I connected with alleged members of crime families. Yeah, it was because there were ads during games.
Yeah. No, that strikes me as rather fanciful. All right, well, it's been a hell of a first week in the NBA. We got lots of awesome content coming up here. Probably be back on Sunday, catch you up on some of the teams we haven't had a chance to talk about much, and what goes on over the weekend. Again, remind everyone that you can subscribe to Dunked on Prime with a 35% off code. That code is preseason25. Link to that is in the show notes. You can get every Hollinger and Duncan, every Duncan and Leroux, all of Dan's daily dunks. He's invaluable, especially when any of these controversies come up. He's been great on the Clippers stuff. He's been great on this, of really staying on top of all the evidence. So he's doing a great job. We hope you'll join us there. Also, please give us a like and subscribe on YouTube as well. Talk to you all again next time.